If I'm going to have a works cited list in my paper, or I'm going to have quotations within my paper, what are some things I might keep in mind? Okay, well, if you're going to have secondary sources in your paper, here are some things I would do. One is have a variety. Have a wide variety of books, magazines, internet sources, newspapers, academic journals, interviews, television shows, whatever. A few weeks ago, I was sitting on the committee of a thesis. I was sitting on a thesis committee for a girl, and she was defending a thesis about environmental issues in Korea and Germany. And she had about 20 sources, but they were almost all Korean sources. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not implying that a Korean source is any less valuable than any other source. But to me, having one country's academics talk about a country's issues on the other side of the world, that's just very limiting, and that's fairly shallow. That's fairly shallow academic work. Put the shoe on the other foot. If someone was going to write a paper about social issues in your country, and they only had books from scholars on the other side of the world, you would not really have a lot of trust in that person's arguments. You would say, my gosh, they didn't make any effort to talk to people in that country. They just simply don't have a good perspective on these issues and what they mean to the people in that country. So use a variety of sources. The second thing I would keep in mind when obtaining secondary sources in a paper is to not rely entirely on electronic sources. This is something that's changed a lot in my lifetime, and it's going to change in the next 20 years again, for sure. Now a lot of serious academic work is done online, and there are academic journals that only publish online. Having said that, call me old-fashioned, I think that there's respectability in having a works cited list that has books, that has magazines, that has printed physical academic journals. They show a breadth of research. They show ambition. If I have a works cited list that is entirely electronic sources, there's still a little part of me that thinks that writer was a little lazy. They couldn't be bothered to go to the library and do some physical research. So to me, there's still a certain gravitas to doing physical research in the book stacks. It should augment the work that you do online. The other reason that it's a good idea to not use entirely electronic sources is the issue of peer editing. When you write a book for publishing in physical format, the publisher is going to have some kind of system of fact-checking or of approving that book, because they're spending a lot of money publishing it and they don't want to ruin their reputation by printing a bunch of garbage. Academic journals, even online ones, they are peer edited, meaning a group of peers who have expertise in that field are going to look over the material and do some checking and approving. The best thing about the internet is anybody can write anything they want. That's also the worst thing. Anybody can write anything they want. The same as I have students who quote material from The Onion or other parody sites in their papers who don't realize that it's a parody site. And you can get yourself burned big time using electronic sources without looking at who made them, who approved them, what kind of fact-checking was done. So you should understand the distinction between a peer-edited article and a non-peer-edited article. A couple other things in using electronic sources. Try not to be too reliant on search engines such as Yahoo, Naver, Google, especially Wikipedia. Try to step beyond that narrow bubble. Those search engines are usually going to point you towards junk food media, to blogs, popular websites, maybe newspaper, magazine, television websites. They're not usually going to aim you towards scholarly articles or serious books. When using secondary sources, particularly internet sources, You want to be careful about bias and make sure that the sources you're using are objective sources. If I'm going to quote a source on economic or tax issues, I probably want to be careful that I'm not quoting from the official website or publication of a political party. I'm not going to get objective information from that source. I might be quoting from a sectarian or a religious organization. It may not be objective information. That's a sensitive thing to say. I'm certainly not going to say that religious-based periodicals or journals or sources are, as a rule, invalid. But I do think you need to be doubly careful of such sources. I've had students ask me, can I use the Bible in my paper? Well, absolutely. As long as it's not the only source, then I have a problem with it.
Okay, a few more topics related to research. First, let's look at books. In particular, let's look at a few strategies or tips for navigating books efficiently and effectively. I love books, and I hope you do too. Even if you don't like books, you probably see a lot of them now, and you will see more later. So, how can we get more out of our books without having to spend so much time looking at every single page? First, we're going to look at a few things such as the title page, table of contents, the index, and so on. The title page is important for helping you with proper APA citation. If you take a look at the example on the screen, obviously we have the title and we have the author as well. Something to note about the title is there could be a subtitle as well, and that's also important when doing proper APA citation. I'm going to give you a special tip about the author. You may come across many books which are written by Western people. Typically, a Western person will have their surname last. So in the case of Bill Gates, his surname is Gates. Bill is the name that people call him, right? As you know, in Korean, the surname, the sung irum, is written first. APA citation requires you to know the author's surname, so you have to keep that straight. You can see the copyright page. This is important for determining the date of publication and the city and other things. I'm going to show you now a place where you can skim to find what you need. An obvious choice it is, however, it is a choice that we'd like to emphasize. The contents page, or the table of contents. It may also be called that. Clearly, this is a page you'd want to look for. Not every book has them. Not every book is quite so detailed. Regardless, you do want to look for this page and see if it can be of assistance. Or, if that page doesn't really seem very helpful, it's not specific enough perhaps, there are often indexes at the back of books. Indexes typically list all of the topics or subjects that are mentioned. Sometimes there's even an author index. If a book has quoted or mentioned many authors, there will be an index of them as well, which means you can look on these pages to find that particular topic or author. Alright, we've looked at books. Now let's look at something you may be less familiar with, but which is also equally important, that is the journal article. So first, a few things to tell you about journals. Journals are sort of like magazines in the academic world. Not quite as glamorous perhaps, but they're sort of like magazines. They're periodic. A journal is academic. It's full of essays or articles, as we say, typically related to a particular field. So you may have a Journal of Korean Studies, Journal of Asian Studies, Journal of Childhood Education, all kinds of things. And you can see that the name typically indicates what topic the journal deals with. The articles or essays and other things which are in the journals are usually submitted by the authors, that is, You may write a paper and want to have it published, and you send it in. And usually it's peer-reviewed, which means other professors, other experts read your essay, check to be sure it's factual and appropriately written and so on. And then if they give it the okay, it gets printed. Okay, so as I mentioned, an article is simply like a report of some kind or an essay of some kind. Usually it fits under one of these categories. It could be research which was conducted, maybe a review of a book that came out into the field dealing with a topic which is relevant to that journal and its readership, or it could be two authors maybe writing back and forth, discussing an essay that one of them wrote, or perhaps discussing their opposing views on something. Okay, let's look at a few pages from a journal to notice some of the important parts. A journal article typically has various landmarks that can help you out. These are the two authors. Some articles have only one author, some have 2, 3, 4, 5, and even more. Now, look in the center and you can see the abstract. It's quite like a summary. It's a very good place to start to see if this article will help you. The introduction, which is the next section that was part of the article, often tells this kind of information. What kind of context does it deal with? What are the key words that you may need to know? And other things to help the reader become acquainted with the specific events that will be discussed. Often next, there is a methodology section. It's going to tell you what exactly happened. Participants or subjects, what people, adults, children, what ages, where are they from, participated, and it will tell you the process. What exact steps and for how much time did the experiment occur? The important point is the author should provide enough information for other people to duplicate, that is, repeat their study to ensure that it's reliable. Next, there's often a results section. Results, I'm probably going to recommend that you avoid it at first. I often avoid the results section too. It's typically quite technical, full of charts, of data, numbers, statistical formulas, or other statistical data, and so it may be difficult to understand at first, especially if you're not mathematically minded. Perhaps the more beneficial step for you would be to skip to the conclusion. This is where the author will kind of try to answer a few very important questions and sum everything up. The author will basically go back to their original hypothesis and tell whether their hypothesis was confirmed or not. And it may do other functions as well. And finally, an author will surely include a reference list for their journal article. That is, all of the other papers and books and things that the author consulted during the preparing and conducting of their experiment will be listed here. So essentially you can use it to find more articles. Okay, another aspect of doing research is taking advantage of the library. In particular, I'd like to briefly talk about the library website. There are so many options. I won't explain them all. First, I do recommend if you go to the library webpage, which is actually library.kmu.ac.kr, you should probably log in. If you have not done so yet, and you're very unfamiliar with the library, I strongly recommend that after you log in, you visit this e-learning button at the bottom of the page. It is in Korean, but there is a video that tells you a lot about the library. So generally, what can you do there? Among other things, you can find journal articles, books, and periodicals, not only at the library, but on their page, of course. You can reserve study rooms or other things. You can even reserve materials. If a book happens to be checked out that you really want to read, you can reserve it so that as soon as it comes back to the library, you will get a text message to notify you. And if there's a book they don't have that you think they need to have, you can put in a request for them to buy it. This is a great thing. Let's take a look at what you might do if you are searching for a journal article. First, after you log in, you'd want to go to the Untitled Chapter, roll your mouse over that until you can see this 학술DB and click on that. And once you've clicked on it, you'll probably get a page that looks like this. There are many databases. A database is simply a resource full of various journals or books or things that you can search through. There are so many databases. My favorite one to start with is called ERIC, E-R-I-C. So click on E in this list here you have of the alphabet. When you do that, your screen will change and you probably will also see what's on the screen now. There's two ERICs. I recommend that you click on the second one and you can see there what ERIC means. Once you click on there, I don't have a screenshot for you, but it will bring you up to a search page. It looks very simple like Google. And on that search page, you can type in whatever keyword or key phrase you're looking for. And it will allow you to access a lot of journal articles. And if they have a copy available, you can download a PDF or other form of the article and print it out and use it for your own use. There are other searches that you might want to do to find just anything in the library. So in this case, you want to roll your mouse over the first option, the 소장 자료 검색, okay, the first left blue button, and then below, click on the 통합 검색. Here, you can access generally anything. I do recommend that you select that option which I showed, which is the 전체 option, the everything option, so that if you're just looking for a keyword, for example, and not an author's name, you can simply type in the keyword. By default, it's set for the author's name, which if you don't know, it's not going to help you. Okay, a few thoughts about citation standards. There are several of them, more than I know, and certainly more than I can count. There's the MLA, Modern Language Association. We have the Chicago Manual of Style, the Harvard system. I'm sure you can guess where that's from. And the system that we use here at KAC is the APA system. The APA system is named for the American Psychological Association. Basically, that's an organization which also publishes journals. And no doubt, in order to get people publishing articles in their journals to write citations in a consistent way, they publish their own style guide as well, which they update frequently. And we use that system, that set of guidelines, to do citation in our classes. I'm going to give you an analogy which I hope will help you remember these two parts. If not, please discard it and use the analogy that works for you. The two elements that are necessary for proper citation are in-text citation, that is, somewhere in the essay that you're writing or in the report that you're writing. At any time when you borrow some information or some ideas from another author, you would immediately recognize that author's name. You are being honest and you are acknowledging the person who originally supplied that information to you. In this case, on the example, there are several authors which have been quoted together. The analogy I'd like you to consider is that of a map. When you see a map of any place, on that map there are often symbols, like numbers or letters, which link back to more information about that location. But we could look somewhere else and find out. So similarly, in an essay, you have these in-text citations, a surname, and a year. What does it all mean? Well, the next part of citation tells you. References list tells you more details about the authors which have been mentioned in your essay. That is, if somebody wants to go and find that author's original writing and confirm, for example, that you correctly quoted them or correctly understood what they had to say, then they can check your reference list. The analogy I'd like you to consider here is a legend for a map. On every map, you've got the symbols, the pictures, the numbers or letters, and you have a legend. You have some key that explains what those symbols are. And that's kind of what a reference list does. It explains in full detail what is connected to that author's surname which you have put into your writing. Here's an example of what a reference list looks like. Notice some of the features. Notice I only have surnames and first initials. The list is in ABC order, alphabetical order according to the author's name. There's also various other formatting tools as well, such as using italics appropriately for the title and so on. Here's a short example of typical in-text citation. That is, something that might appear inside a paragraph of my report or essay. Oops, spelling mistake. Disregarding my spelling mistake, you can see that the underlined part, Smith 2009, indicates I got this piece of information after reading Smith's book. So any reader of my essay could go back to the book and verify what I have reported here. And there you have it.
Part of the confusion over plagiarism is determining whether someone is plagiarizing. You are not plagiarizing if the information is common knowledge, something that everyone knows. If you found information or an opinion in a source which everyone doesn't know, and you simply print it as your own writing, that's plagiarism. How to fix it? Give credit. If you take the text someone else wrote and present it as your own, you are plagiarizing. How to fix it? Give credit. If you paraphrase the text, it is still plagiarizing because you are stealing someone else's idea. How to fix it? Give credit. But here you don't need quotation marks. Keimyung is a Christian university. Whether you are Christian or not, live up to the university's moral standards. Do not plagiarize, and do not try to tell others that you didn't know it was wrong. If nowhere else, you're being told right now that it is very, very wrong. You have the right to say to the world, it's not a big deal in Korea, it's how we do things. And the rest of the world has the right to say, it is a very big deal here. We'll hire someone else. Plagiarism is an easy monster to kill. Give credit.